Monday. It's really good to have you here, everybody. This is The Sweat. I am Emerson Lotzia. 60 minutes of the good stuff is coming your way. So who to stuff inside your NBA and NHL rosters, plus the top showdown in sportsbook plays for tonight's Monday night matchup between the Giants and the Chiefs. We're going to start with our hangover segment, though, following a Sunday full of stunners around the NFL. Good morning to our panel, DraftKings contributors, Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich. A massive divisional win in overtime for the Titans, and now a major injury blow. Derrick Henry might be done for the season with a broken bone in his foot. Jeff, how do you view Tennessee as a Super Bowl contender without arguably the best offensive player in the game right now?
Yeah, this one hurts. Obviously, I really like Tennessee as the dark horse in the AFC conference. I still think that conference is wide open. And I mean, I'm not going to write them off completely. I mean, it's still a wide open conference. We've got the Chiefs taking a major step back. But this does open up things for a team like the Bills to just, potentially not have to deal with Derrick Henry late in the season when Derrick Henry is the toughest to deal with. So we're really going to test the theory that running backs don't matter here, because if somehow Tennessee can get through this conference and get to the Super Bowl, I don't know if a running back would be drafted in the first round for the next decade or so. I mean, they still would, because NFL executives don't pay attention to this stuff. But my point is, this is a pretty big blow for a team whose offense was built around Derrick Henry, who ran the ball even when they were behind. And I'm just not sure how they're going to replace him. It is good. The one thing I'll say, A.J. Brown is back. So,
yep.
Maybe the Titans move to a little bit more passing-centric offense, and maybe that ends up working out the best for them. Who knows? But you've got to think it's at least a minor blow to their chances here, and most likely a major one.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus 1,600 right now on the DK Sportsbook to win the Super Bowl, Pierce. You picking up what that bet is putting down? You also got to expect them to now maybe be a little active at the trade deadline tomorrow, which is at 4 o'clock here.
And I'm going to write them. I guess there are some running backs out there that you can pick up through them. D'Ernest Johnson, I don't know. That's not going to change anything. Write these guys off. I mean, even if you were healthy, I'm not a believer in the Titans. We've seen this from them before. They're a great regular season team, but there's just too many flaws on this team. We see it every single year that they can't be perfect in January and February. And that's what they need to be. They need Ryan Tannehill to be perfect and not be Ryan Tannehill, and he'll have one bad game. Or the offensive line, we've seen them turn into pumpkins at times. And then also the secondary has issues. They're injured. Julio Jones, we don't know if he'll ever play. A.J. Brown looks good, but again, he's pretty mercurial as well. They're just too up and down of a team. They're not well coached as much as people like Vrabel. They just can't get it together. We say the same thing every year.
Yeah, A.J. Brown's been a monster over the past 3 weeks. It's an offense, though, that relies so heavily on the play action. They run the ball 47.4% of their plays. I mean, it's the fourth highest figure in the league. So you got to expect this offense to maybe look a little different moving forward, especially if Henry is out for the rest of the year. Let's overreact to some other things that went down on a wild Sunday here, guys, in Week 8. The Jets shocked the world, and the legend of Mike White is born. He goes over 400 passing yards as New York takes down the mighty Bengals. This poor man's Tom Brady can lead the Jets to another 10-point upset on Thursday night against the Colts. You buying that, Pierce?
No, I'm not buying that whatsoever. The Bengals clearly overlooked the Jets. They weren't prepared. It was a very sloppy game from them. They were missing tackles. They didn't put any pressure on the quarterback. A 4% pressure rate on Mike White. What are you doing, Cincinnati? I mean, this is one of the worst offensive lines in football. Zach Wilson was dealing with a 30% pressure rate every game, and yet Mike White goes out there and doesn't have to deal with anything. He's allowed to check down all game long. He throws these, intended air yards of 5 yards per play, and is able to move the ball downfield and score. Now, the good thing he's got going for him is Indianapolis, his opponent this week. They are one of the worst. They are the worst in terms of pressure rate. They don't blitz. They don't get to the quarterback at all. But the problem that White's going to run into is that's what the Colts defense does. They allow you to do all these check down passes. They'll give you underneath yards all day, all long, but you can't score against them. So White could probably have another good fantasy day, but I don't think the Jets are going to win again.
I mean, Jeff, what do you think here, too? This doesn't look like a fluke. He was tossing dimes, second quarterback ever to throw for 400 yards in his first career start, joining Cam Newton.
It's a cool story. I hope somebody goes out and gives Mike White like $100 million next year. It's probably what will happen. So good for him. No, it's not going to happen again. Pierce is right on. I don't know what the Bengals were doing last week. Like the other thing is, I mean, a lot of Mike White's production. It came in the end of this game. The Bengals were salting the game away, and then they just threw a random pick, and all of a sudden he's got the ball back, and all of these fantasy points are flowing. So it was a weird game. The Jets in no way should have won that game, either from a matchup perspective or just in game. They needed so many things to go right. The Colts this is a pretty big bounce back spot. They're just going to run Jonathan Taylor. This is probably even going to be a slower paced game as well. I do not expect another sloppy shootout like the Bengals handed Mike White last week. So all things considered, yeah, he'll probably rack up a few yards like Pierce said. That's what the Colts do, give up. But if they get any pressure on him, this chalice is going to turn into a pumpkin pretty fast.
I mean, dude, they ran the Philly special. The number one play for teams, writing iconic backup quarterback
here.
Performances. Yeah. Incredible. I do hope they give him $100 million. Good for him.
Someone will.
He's earned it
Jags.
after one.
The Jags probably will, Emerson. The Jags probably will.
Yeah, you know what? Sure, come to Jacksonville, right? Who needs Trevor Lawrence? Anyone who bet the Lions, guys, to go winless before the season started must be feeling pretty good about themselves right now after Detroit just got destroyed by the Eagles yesterday. The Lions will be the first team to go winless since the 2017 Browns. Is that an overreaction, Jeff?
It's not an overreaction at all. I mean, I'm just looking at their schedule right here. I mean, there's a lot of teams with winning records here, and there's no more Eagles on the schedule. There's no Jacksonville here. They got the Steelers and the Browns. Maybe they get a win at home versus the Bears in 3 weeks. That might be their best chance because it's at home. And then, heading into the end of the year, man, the easiest team they have is on the road at Atlanta. This team is probably better than 50-50 to go winless right now. I do think that Bears game is going to be for all the marbles, unless the Pittsburgh throws in one of their classic stinkers, which is entirely possible. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. But this Lions team, man, they had the everything set up. People were pumping them up. This is it. Philly stinks. And they don't even show up. So I don't know, man. This is, this is just it's almost too easy a spot to take a victory lap because pretty much everyone who is on this show does NFL analysis said the Detroit Lions are going to be a dumpster fire. You can't come in and do this rah. We're gonna bust up the other team and be more physical. That's how we're gonna win. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in today's NFL, and it's not working for Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. So I'll take the victory lap for all of us. I mean, Pierce can too if he wants, but no, I think there's a very, very good chance, possibly even over 50% right now, that the Lions go winless. Yeah,
Pierce, what do you think? You think they go winless? Looks like Jeff just ripped through the schedule. Maybe their best opportunity, as he mentioned, the Bears at home on Thanksgiving, or hey, even Week 18 if the Packers have already locked in their postseason seeding.
I don't think that's going to be the case. Schedule does not look good. I would say the best chance they have is winning the day after Christmas against Atlanta. But I think they're probably going to have more of a Grinch appearance than they will a Santa appearance in that game. So I think they're going to lose them all. They look bad. I mean, it's not the schedule looks bad. They look bad. And one thing I want to point out is the DF and EFS industrial complex has been hyping up DeAndre Swift for the last 2 seasons. Can we get all those people now to admit that they were wrong? He looks terrible. He's bad in garbage time against garbage opponents. I'm so tired of hearing about DeAndre Swift. Let's put that to bed. This team's terrible. He's terrible. Let's move on.
Yeah, I think Julian Edelman was really tooting his horn yesterday too. Ooh, bad look for Jules. Maybe not a great look for the Bucs though either yesterday. Saints beat Tampa Bay at home. Just half a game back now. The Saints are in the NFC South. So they are plus 300 to win the South, win the division, with the Bucs still at minus 400 here, dudes. The Saints, they are a serious division contender after what you witnessed in Week 8 yesterday, even without Jameis Winston, who the team believes suffered a significant knee injury, Pierce.
No way. I mean, maybe losing Winston helps, but replacing him with Trevor Siemian doesn't help that much either. Give Siemian plenty of time, and I'm sure he'll let them down. I think we're just overreacting to a poor game by Tom Brady, but we've seen this so many times before. Tom Brady struggles against the Saints. Tom Brady struggles against good pass rushes. They didn't even get a lot of pressure on him, but they got to him enough. And if you hit Tom Brady a couple times, it rattles him and he makes some mistakes, and he'll lose a game or two every season when that happens. Sometimes it happens in the Super Bowl. Sometimes it happens on the big stage. But over the long run, Tom Brady is just fine, and they're going to go as far as probably anybody.
I mean, Simeon comes in here, Jeff. He beats Tom Brady. A backup quarterback dressing up as starters for Halloween. That was a theme yesterday.
I mean, look, Tom Brady struggles against backup quarterbacks, as we saw in the Super Bowl back in 2016.
You love
so
that.
Maybe there is something to this. I'm actually going to take the positive approach here, and I kind of like this bet. And here's my thinking. What does Jameis Winston really give you that Trevor Siemian doesn't? We've seen that Trevor Siemian be a capable starter at points in his career, and I'm not suggesting he's going to turn into Nick Foles here, but I almost like the potential with Siemian versus Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, we saw, okay, he was capable, he's running, he wasn't doing anything great. I think Jameis Winston's best attribute so far to the Saints has just been running the ball a little bit, but I think Siemian might even be a better passer. I know that's a hot take, but
yeah.
I'm not necessarily down on the Saints just because they're turning to him. And don't forget, Taysom Hill is probably going to come back at some point, and I'm still of the opinion that this offense and the way this team is playing, slow paced, want to run the ball, they're probably still best served by just putting Taysom Hill in there and letting him run it 15 times per game. So I think the Saints are going to be there to the very end. I think this is going to come down to, does Tampa slip up? The Saints have some winnable games. They got a couple tough matchups, but they also have the Jets, the Dolphins, the Falcons, the Panthers. There's a lot of wins there. So I think this one is going to come down. I think there's some value, though, in taking the Saints at, like you said, plus 300.
Should the Saints call Cam Newton, Jeff?
No.
Pierce?
Come on.
Pierce?
Yeah, give him a call. Why not?
Okay.
Give Mike White a call, too.
All right. Again,
how about Matt Flynn? Let's get Matt Flynn on it. Let's get all three of them in. Let's
go.
Now,
if you're Jeff, not only do you call Mr. White, you give him $100 million. Speaking of one of Cam's former teams, the Patriots, they pulled themselves off the mat yesterday, guys, and knock off the Chargers on the road. They're back at 500 all of a sudden. The Patriots still in contention for a playoff spot. That bet's plus 115 on the DK Sportsbook. Their number to win the division plus 750. You taking that, Jeff?
I don't think I'm going to take the division win. I mean, Buffalo, even if Buffalo loses to the Patriots, Buffalo's probably just going to win the rest of their games because they're such a solid team. So the Patriots, in my opinion, they're too far back to think about that. It's a really good number, but I actually don't think it's big enough. I love the playoff spot bet at plus 115. We've harped on this from the very start, man, that the Patriots are a good team. The Patriots could easily be tied for the division lead right now. They've got a defense that's heading up in a lot of metrics. They get pressure. They've played a ton of close games against good teams, and they really just blew one game at the start of the year too against one weak team. So all things considered, I think the Patriots are a good team. You see Mac Jones, easily the best out of the rookie class in terms of consistency at QB, improving every week too. This offense seems to be getting a little bit looser in terms of just going for more big plays. Yeah, absolutely. Plus 115. You look at this. Pierce made a really good call. The Chargers are frauds. There's other teams in the AFC with winning records that are just as big frauds right now. And I don't think the Patriots are frauds at all. I think by the time this all shakes down, the Patriots do end up in a wild card position. So plus 115 to make the playoffs. Yeah, I still think you're getting really good value there.
All right, cool. Which bet do you like here, Pierce?
Yeah, I'm going to take the chance here. We don't know if Buffalo is going to be able to keep it up. We'll talk a little bit more about Buffalo later. But yeah, the Chargers are frauds. Got to keep repeating that, so I don't want to overreact to that. But the Patriots, as Jeff pointed out yesterday, we look at some of their early season losses. Those could have easily been wins had they, the ball bounced a different way or things fell in their favor. So the defense, the Patriots, is getting better every single week. Their offensive line is playing really well. You look at the pressure rate that Mac Jones has dealt with the last 2 weeks. 10% pressure rate against the Jets, just a 2% pressure rate last week against the Chargers. He didn't have the best game ever, but in terms of development, it's not linear. We don't have like a line graph that's constantly going up. There's going to be up weeks and down weeks, but overall, at the end of the season, we're going to see that Mac Jones is going to be a top-tier quarterback by the time we get to the playoffs. The receiving core, they don't have any flashy names, but it's all blue-collar guys that are going to get the job done. We know that the rush attack is there. They've got all the pieces, and more importantly, they've got the coaching staff that no one else has. So I think they definitely are this dark horse candidate. It's time to get rid of the Titans and start backing the Patriots.
Yeah, after blowing out the Jets last week, definitely their first legitimate statement victory this season, guys. Real quick before you all take off, we're a day after Halloween. It's still spooky season in my book, for sure. We're going to take a look here at Super Bowl winner odds right now. Which number, guys, looking a little spooky to you? Which one you're like, I'm just going to kind of fade that and stay away from it, Pierce?
I'll stay away from the Bills as the favorite. I just don't want anything to do with anyone that's the favorite at this point in the season. There's just too many unknowns. And then ultimately, I just don't buy into a team that's got a running back tandem of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. It's going to be very hard for them to make their way through the playoffs with that backfield. As good as their defense is, as good as Josh Allen's played, I think you need to be a little bit more conservative. You got to be able to run the ball more consistently in the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl.
What do you got for a spooky bet here, Jeff? One you want to steer clear of?
Pretty much the same idea, but I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to say stay away from the Rams at plus 750. This team's getting its tires pumped again because they've beaten the Lions and the Texans 2 weeks in a row. And oh, by the way, they barely beat the Lions. Now they're the favorites over Green Bay and Arizona. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. So for me, the Packers are the bet there in the NFC. The Rams looking very spooky, very, very spooky at plus 750. I'm not necessarily a huge believer that this team has what it takes. They just allow a little bit too much on the ground, and I think that their defense will get exposed a little bit in the playoffs.
All right, so it's more of a defensive thing for them because I feel like Matthew Stafford is everything the Rams wanted and more.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's not a condemnation. They're not a bad team or anything.
Yeah.
It's not a condemnation on Stafford, but I think when you look at the odds mainly, you're thinking, well, the Rams lost to the Cardinals at home. The Packers just beat the Cardinals, yet the Rams are favored over both those teams again, off of 2 week wins or wins over weak teams.
Okay.
I just don't think that their odds make any sense, and they're kind of spooky.
Right on. That was fun. Good little overreaction, good little NFL hangover segment, but hang out because we have a big Monday Night Football showdown to discuss coming up. That's right after this break, which is right before our discussion about the NBA slate tonight. All right, going to the hardwood, everybody. A little basketball discussion. We got a panel here for it, a little NBA panel. DraftKings contributors, Matt Meisel. Maybe we got RotoWire's Nick Whalen in the house as well. Guys, NBA pick and roll. So you agree with these picks or you feel like rolling to another? Let's start with Ja Morant. He is your best guard option tonight. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, he's certainly a good option. I don't know if he's the best option. I'm a little worried about this matchup against Denver, which has actually been the second best defense in the league so far. And we'll see if that holds up over the course of the season, but it's not really an ideal matchup for Ja Morant. With that said, he's been so good lately that he's almost already reached that point where you don't really worry all that much about the matchup. So certainly a justifiable option for your lineups tonight. I think I'd maybe slightly prefer Trae Young at point guard at 9,300. He goes up against the Washington Wizards. Even LaMelo Ball at 8,500. He's been a little bit up and down these first couple of weeks, but coming off of a 52.3 DraftKings point game against Portland on Sunday, saving the money, taking him at 8,500 in a good matchup against the Cavs. To me, that's probably my favorite point guard play tonight.
Okay, what's your favorite point guard play tonight, Matt? Is it Ja Morant?
So I'm with Nick, actually. I think Trae Young, point per dollar, is probably the better option. I do think Morant will be pretty contrarian pick tonight with not the best matchup there against Denver. So for a GPP pick, I think he actually could be a good choice. But ultimately, this is not a slate, at least at the time we're talking, where there's a lot of cheap players who look underpriced. So this probably just isn't a slate where you want to pay up for too many guys in general and go into some guys in the 5, 6, or 7K range, maybe like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at point guard. I think I prefer picks like that where you go with a little more of a balanced lineup because and then as soon as we're done talking, this always happens. Some injury news will break, and then Ja Morant will look a lot better. But as of now, I think that just going cheaper at all positions kind of makes more sense. Yeah,
friendly reminder, make sure you guys and gals are following DK Live on Twitter because they're always, the whole squad is always tweeting the latest up-to-date updates when it comes to injuries and news around the league. Maddie, you picking Sabonis or Randle tonight, or do you want to roll with someone else for a top forward play?
So I think it's the same problem that Morant has, where Sabonis and Randle both could have really good games, but they're just a little too expensive. And at forward in particular, I think there actually are a lot of guys in the mid-range. So my favorite forward on this slate is probably someone like Michael Porter Jr., Jaren Jackson. We did get one piece of news today that Scotty Barnes is doubtful for the Raptors. So that could open up minutes for Chris Boucher, maybe someone like that. So I know it's a little bit of a cop-out to not to pick an expensive forward, but I just think there are a lot of forwards in the mid-tier who look really, really good. So I'm going to those guys instead.
Mr. Whalen, how about you, dude?
Yeah, I feel mostly the same way. Like Matt said, it's like you're never going to sit there and say, like, there's no chance Sabonis or Randle have big games tonight. But I think there are maybe wiser ways to spend that money. If I had to choose between those two, however, I think I would lean Randle. Seems like he's in a good spot to potentially bounce back. 3 straight games under 17 points for Julius Randle, which is basically unheard of for him since the start of last season. But he still provides you with such a high floor with the rebounding. He's still been handing out a ton of assists, even though the scoring hasn't been there over those last few games. I think Miles Bridges at 7,900 is still a pretty decent deal. His price is up, almost $1,000 since the start of the year, but he's been worth it pretty much every single night. It hasn't slowed down at all. And another name, in that Raptors game with Scotty Barnes likely out for this one, OG Anunoby at 7,400. Even with Barnes in the lineup the last few games, he's been playing a ton of minutes, up close to 40 per game. I don't think that changes tonight. So you could look to Chris Boucher, like Matt said. You could even maybe look to Khem Birch, who probably picks up some minutes. Precious Achiuwa's playing time has been down a little bit these last couple of games anyway. So that Raptors game, I think, is the area to target for value at the forward spot.
Hey, Nick, is Jason Tatum the top pick in the Celtics-Bulls matchup?
I think he has to be. He's had some weirdly inefficient shooting nights this season. He's one of his last 13 from 3 over these last 2 games. He, of course, had that 2 of 15 disaster from 3 on opening night. But I think he's still Boston's highest upside player on almost every single night. Jaylen Brown has had his games as well this season, but Tatum's floor, I think, is quite a bit higher night to night. If you look at the other side of this matchup, like Zach LaVine, I think has looked okay. He's playing through that torn ligament in his hand. He's been, good, not great in his last 2 games. You do wonder, how much that bothers him. So even if you think LaVine versus Tatum is somewhat comparable, I think the fact that LaVine is continuing to play through an issue on his dominant shooting hand, maybe that breaks the tie for me. So I'm willing to pay the $900 more and go Tatum over LaVine.
9-game slate tonight. Is Tatum the top pick in this game, Matt?
I think he's certainly right up there. I think there could be a case for Nikola Vucevic if you think that because LaVine is playing a little bit hurt, maybe he just doesn't shoot quite as much as he normally does. And I think we could see some of that offense funneled more towards Vucevic, towards DeRozan, towards Lonzo Ball. I still think it probably is Tatum. This is a game, though, even though the total is pretty reasonable, up near 220, there are a lot of players to score on both teams, and both teams are pretty healthy right now. So I don't really love anyone. It's almost like Tatum is the least bad option. As far as like the big upside game, I think he is the most likely there. The player I like the most from the game overall is probably Al Horford. I just think he's the most reliable asset for either team. But as far as putting up a big game, I think Tatum is the guy.
Matt, Trae Young or Bradley Beal in this Hawks-Wizards game to have a better DFS night?
I think it's most likely to be Trae Young. He's also cheaper, so he probably does make for the better play. But I do think less people will have Bradley Beal. So this is going to kind of depend what contest you're playing and what your goal is there. Because I think Beal at 10K compared to Trae at 9,300, it's just like Trae's easier to fit. And this is a night where we're probably going to have a bit of a salary crunch where I don't think a lot of people are playing Bradley Beal. And the Wizards defensively are not as good as the Hawks either. So my pick is most likely Trae, but I actually think I prefer Beal for tournaments.
Which one do you roll with, Nick?
This is a tough call. I like them both, but I would lean toward Bradley Beal. He's got 51 and 59 DraftKings points over his last 2 games. He's got 58 field goal attempts and 13 free throws in that span. He leads the league in usage rate in the early going, up over 35%, which is crazy high, especially for a non-point guard. And then you look at Trae Young. I mean, his scoring has slowed down a little bit of late. He had those back-to-back 30-point games, kind of right around the 1 week mark, but scoring's been down lately. The assists have been great. That provides him a nice floor, but he doesn't really rebound at all, not nearly at the rate of Beal. And the 3-point shooting, really for the last year and a half now has come and gone for Trae Young. I think you still think of him as this like Steph Curry type of player, but he has no more than 2 made threes in any game this season. Really since the start of last year, he's cut down on the 3-point rate. He's been getting to the line more. And obviously he's one of a handful of players who are still adjusting to the way that the league has adjusted its officiating this season. So long term, I think Trae Young is obviously going to be fine, but just for tonight's slate, I think I do prefer Beal.
Let's go over to the DK Sportsbook here, Nick. Lowest, what do we have? 208.5? Okay, sounds good. So lowest game total on the board now is Toronto, New York at 208.5. Knicks averaging 117. Raptors at 103. You picking that total as your favorite tonight, Nick?
It's tough to say. I mean, like you said, it's already down 2.5 points overnight since when we first started looking at it on Sunday night. So, the money is coming in on this under. The Knicks are 7-point favorites in this game. So the implied total for Toronto is about 101 points. Not expecting a whole lot from that Raptors offense. These are 2 bottom 5 teams in pace. But despite that, the Knicks are number 2 in the league in scoring in terms of points per game, behind only the Charlotte Hornets. So they've been super efficient. They're shooting 41% from 3 as a team in the early going. Obviously, that's not super sustainable. If I had to make a pick on this total, I think I would go over. I think the Knicks can get into the 110s, maybe even the low 120s if that shooting holds up. I think Toronto probably comes in right around 100 to 105 points. This total is just sunk a little too low for me to go with the under.
Matt, is this your favorite total tonight, or you got another one?
So this one's a little hard to read because we have this Scotty Barnes news, and I think that is why the total has dropped already. It's going to be interesting to see what the Raptors do as far as their lineup, because I think there's a chance that we see them play a much bigger lineup than what they normally play with someone like Kem Birch, who we mentioned before, or Chris Boucher. And then the game just slows down a ton. And then we see a game where there's less than 200 points, because I think the Knicks are playing a little over their heads as far as offense. Their stats are also boosted by the fact that they played a double overtime game already this year. So I actually am leaning under here, but I'm kind of just interested in what the starting lineup will be for the Raptors, and then I can have more concrete of a take. But I actually think it is right that the total's been dropping here.
Celtics are not off to a hot start. In fact, they really are addicted to overtime, even double overtime through like 6 games. Bulls are 5-1 though. So Boston is at home, now favored by 2, down from 2.5. You like the Bulls in this one, or are you rolling to another game as your favorite spread to bet tonight, Matt?
So I promise I'm not just doing this to pander to the Boston fans in the house, but
yeah.
I actually think this. I think the Celtics are the best bet on the board tonight.
Wow.
Not the Bulls, who are off to this hot start. I think part of the reason that this line is still too low at Celtics -2 is because the Bulls have won so many games to start out the year. But we talked about already, Zach LaVine may not be 100%. Patrick Williams is now out for the Bulls, and I think he's probably the guy who would have spent the most time guarding Jason Tatum. The Bulls don't really have another player, I think, who can really slow him down. He's kind of it as far as at least like bigger wing defenders. They can use Alex Caruso probably on Jaylen Brown, but for Tatum, I think Williams was the guy there. And then I think this is right. The Celtics haven't played a game yet this year with all of their players healthy. We had Marcus Smart was sick. Robert Williams was also sick. Al Horford rested, or I think had COVID the first game of the season. Jaylen Brown has missed a game. Tonight should be, if it's not the first, it's one of the first times where the Celtics actually have their full roster intact. And this is a really deep team. I think the Celtics bench is a lot better than the Bulls, and they're at home. So, like, to me, Boston is the better team. They just haven't played like it. They haven't been fully healthy. This could be the game where they finally have it all start to come together. I'm sure that more of the bets and the handle and all of that are on the Chicago side. Just if you look at the records, the Bulls should probably win. But I think ultimately the Celtics wind up being the better team this year, and they're at home, so I think they cover.
Yeah, the Green Teamers, an even keel and fair fan base, many demanding that Ime Udoka already be fired through 6 games. Matt's calling this the best bet tonight, his best bet. Nick, what are you calling it?
I wouldn't call it my best bet, but I do agree with Matt that I like Boston to win this game. And the spread is down to Boston -1.5. So I think that's a pretty smart play. Chicago is 5-1, but they haven't really played anybody. They played a good team in the Knicks. They lost that game. That they tried to give away that game to Toronto over the weekend, ended up pulling out the win. But like Matt alluded to, I think they're really going to miss Patrick Williams. Like, this is a team that, unlike Boston, is very top heavy and very reliant on its top 3 or 4 guys they let Lauri Markkanen go this offseason. They have very, very little depth in the front court, especially. I mean, now it's Derek Jones, it's some guy named Marko Simonovic, it might be Alize Johnson. I mean, those minutes have to go somewhere, and they don't really have a true replacement for essentially a defensive specialist in Patrick Williams. So I think they're going to feel that loss quite a bit, and perhaps that starts tonight against Boston. The game I really had my eye on, though, is Minnesota-Orlando. Wolves are favored by 9 in this one. It is a big number. I know we are talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves after all, but I think this could be a get-right game for that Minnesota offense, which just hasn't really looked all that good so far. Ironically, Minnesota's been really good on defense. Orlando is the worst defense in the entire league, second worst net rating in the league, behind only OKC. They turn the ball over a ton. They don't force a lot of turnovers. I like a lot of the individual pieces in Orlando. I think they have a nice thing going for the future, but I think this is a spot where Minnesota wins, in kind of a blowout fashion.
Now 8.5 on the DK Sportsbook there, Nick. Second largest spread of the night. Clippers favored by 11 at home against the Thunder, who you just mentioned, are also a really bad basketball team. We will talk to you guys later. Thanks for the help this morning. We have talked already, guys, about the Week 8 games that happened yesterday. Now let's start talking about the one that's happening tonight before we get back to Jeff and Pierce. Here's Pat Mayo with an interesting player prop that he likes for this evening.
I haven't gone to the prop market in a while because I kept losing them.
I like that.
But this is one that I've actually bet every week this season, and it's come through 6 of 7 times. They finally adjusted the number up a little bit, but it still seems too low for me based on what's going on with him, is Patrick Mahomes over 21.5 rushing yards. He's been over this number in 5 of 7 games, each of the past 5, and he's covered his rushing total in 6 of 7 games so far. Like, their offensive line just isn't holding up, and what it's really forcing them to do, especially with Hill and Kelsey a bit banged up at the moment, is Patrick Mahomes just takes off for like 15 yards at a time. He easily covers these numbers. He gets his one big chunk run every single game as he just looks down the field and doesn't have to scrambles for a bit, doesn't see anyone, just takes off and there's no one there. Then he piles up another like 4, 5, 6 yard rushes during the game, and he's easily there. I think the Giants will be able to get into the backfield. I think it's FU time for the Chiefs. They really need to, I don't necessarily, listen, this isn't the BCS. They don't need to make a statement. They just need to beat the Giants. But, home field, I think that Mahomes is going to be able to elude the defensive line in this game and continue to go over his rushing prop. The Mahomes rushing prop is the new Jameis rushing prop, Cam.
Yeah, no, I that's a great bet. Kansas City's just also playing bad. They've had the worst luck going. I think Mahomes also, he talked to the team. He says, I got to be better. And if he doesn't see it, instead of forcing the issue, he's going to take off. Pat, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually had over like 50 or 60 yards. I wouldn't be surprised if he busted a long touchdown run in this game. This is a huge game against the Giants for the Kansas City Chiefs, for the Chiefs against the Giants, sorry. And I think they're going to be showing up big time. If they have to make a statement, they've got to blow these guys out of the water because they're the most disappointing team in the NFL right now.
Pat, just a question. Have they been adjusting these Mahomes yardage totals up, or has it been around that same number for most of the year?
It's been going up incrementally almost every single week. Like, I was betting it at 15.5. I bet it at 17.5. I bet it at 19.5. It was 19.5 last week. It's up to 21.5 now.
So opposing teams are making the Kansas City Chiefs work their way methodically down the field, right? You look at how teams are defending them. They're taking away the deep ball. And I think that really helps in terms of Mahomes' rushing yardage because you have your safeties away from the line of scrimmage in general, playing deep downfield. On top of that, you'd see in years past, whenever the pocket would break down for Mahomes, he'd look downfield, he'd find someone one-on-one, and he'd just lob it up to them. And you're really not facing those types of situations this year. So when he scrambles out, he's way more likely to run it. I actually like that. I haven't really, I'm not a big props guy in general and don't pay attention to the markets. But I think that Mahomes is definitely way more active now because he has so many players in the opposing secondary that are just preventing that deep ball, and he's just taking what the defenses are giving him.
Yeah. Are you guys done? Jeff and Pierce, you guys done? I don't know if we could hear you or not, but man, you guys are chatty Cathy behind the scenes as Pat Mayo was trying to give us a lot of very good information there. We are going to talk about this Monday Night Football showdown. It's the final game of Week 8, and it's happening. I just want to remind you, Jeff and Pierce, on the first day of November in this year of 2021. It's the Giants at the Chiefs, and we need to talk about DFS plays in the showdown. There's a Millie Maker again on DraftKings. I'm looking at it right now. It costs $15 to enter. Imagine being able to turn $15 into $1 million. Well, how do you do that? You listen to these two dudes and the advice they're giving you. We'll start with, who are you captaining in this DFS showdown, Jeff?
I like going after the New York Giants receiving core. Now, look, I mean, this is going to take a little bit of, reading the tea leaves and what's going to happen tonight, because we have Sterling Shepard questionable, Kadarius Toney questionable. It sounds like Shepard is the one who is like almost certainly going to play, though, and that's where I would go for a captain spot. $7,000 in the flex, 10,500, in the captain. Shepard, as we've seen, when he's in, he's going to get peppered in targets. I mean, they brought him back for one game and promptly threw the ball 14 times to him. Kadarius Toney, it sounds like if he plays, it's going to be more of like, I'm not quite 100%. I'm going to be out there and giving it all in full spirit, and he's probably going to be running some deep routes still. But Shepard is the guy I think you have to lean on here against the Chiefs defense. Bottom of the league in most passing stats, do not get their last in pressure. They get the least amount of sacks per game here. So, Daniel Jones is going to have time to sit back there. And I don't even mind Daniel Jones, but I'm saving him for Pierce because I know how much he loves Daniel Jones. I like going, though, cheap, because captaining Sterling Shepard, captaining a cheaper Giants wide receiver, well, it lets you fit in Kelsey coming back or Tyreek Hill or Mahomes. So, wait for the injury news to get 100% confirmation. But, man, if Sterling Shepard gets the go-ahead, which it looks like he's going to, I think he's a fantastic captain.
Yeah, that would save you some cash, too. He's only 10.5 up there in the captain spot. Again, if you're new to the program, everyone 1.5 times the salary, but you get 1.5 times the points in return. Pierce, so is Daniel Jones your guy?
Yeah, if you're new to the program, then you should know that we talk about Daniel Jones ad nauseum on here. But he's been relatively, significant in fantasy football. He runs the ball, he passes the ball well. He's always pretty affordable. And this is a great matchup. I mean, we've played him in tougher spots, and he's basically playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know people see Kansas City Chiefs, but this is the second worst pass defense. There's no pass rush whatsoever. He should be able to complete passes, get the yards to the air, get the yards on the ground. Will he get the touchdowns? That might be a bit of a concern, but on a showdown slate, I'm not really going to fret over that too much. Plus, that somehow they are 10-point dogs, which means they're going to pass more. And so I'm definitely going to take advantage of that. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than that. But Jones is pretty much the whole offense. Barkley's out. I can't imagine that Devontae Booker is going to be, the main factor here on offense. So I think we're going to get a lot of Shepard. We're going to get a lot of Daniel Jones in this game against a bad defense.
Comparing the Chiefs to the Jaguars, someone woke up this morning and chose violence. Interesting, Pierce. Hey, who is stacking with Jones then, Pierce?
Well, that's actually a compliment for you, Jags fan. You probably like being compared to the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's right, baby.
Chiefs guys like that too much. Yeah, I'm going to take Shepard, the value play that Jeff just mentioned. He looked great in the first 2 weeks before injury. Now, yes, it's true. There's tons of injury concerns. If you've been following the Giants like we have, they get injured every week. A new receiver goes down. So, yeah, you got to worry about that. But we can't predict that. We don't know if Shepard's going to get injured on the 4th or 5th play of the game. But, in the 3 full games that he's played, he's caught 9 passes or averaged 9 catches for 90 yards per game. The first 2 weeks, he was in an absolute perfect rhythm with Daniel Jones. And as Jeff mentioned, in his first game back, he got 14 targets and looked like he hadn't missed a game at all. I know Toney's right there as well, but Shepard has been his favorite target. And again, if for whatever reason Kansas City blows out the Giants, then there should be plenty of garbage points here for Shepard. If it's close, then I've got to believe that it's Shepard, not Devontae Booker, that's making this game close.
So, Jeff, natural stack then with Shepard would be Jones, right? Or do you want to do something else?
I mean, it's definitely Jones, and I agree with what Pierce said. I think people are going to judge Jones based on his last 3 games. That's wrong because he didn't have any receivers. He had really tough matchups. But we'll talk about someone else to give our producers some extra content here, because I do think you can stack with someone on the other side. And I think Darrel Williams in this spot makes a ton of sense. Maybe it doesn't make the most sense for the Chiefs to give Darrel Williams like 20 touches in this game, but you do feel like that's going to be the reaction from Andy Reid after just an insanely bad outing by his high-volume pass offense or his high-flying pass offense. Last time we saw the Chiefs go up against a weak NFC East opponent, it was the Washington football team. Darrel Williams got 21 touches. He scored twice. He's not the most explosive back, but this Giants rush defense, it is one of the worst in the league. They're 10th worst in terms of yards per carry allowed. They've allowed a lot of big games to opposing running backs. I do think Darrel Williams is probably going to have a decent game here. You're probably going to see him breaking off 6-8 yard chunks with regularity. And at the end of the game, you're going to add it all up and be like, wow, this guy's got, 80, maybe 100 all-purpose yards, and he's probably found the end zone once. The Chiefs have a massive implied team total here. Darrel Williams is going to get the red zone looks. He's playing over 65% of the snaps when he's healthy. Jerick McKinnon's just coming in for scraps. It's not a sexy play, but like if I'm stacking a Jones Sterling Shepard combo on the other side, you've got to figure Darrell Williams is probably getting some scores for the Chiefs and making the Giants pass more. So I like stacking my Shepard captain spot with, just a Darrell Williams in the flex.
So, Jeff, what direction do you go in here if you need to find some value in the showdown?
Yeah, again, I'm going to stick with this Giants theme. I mean, their wide receiver spot, I think, is just ripe tonight. But Dante Pettis, even if Tony and Shepard both play, I think Dante Pettis is going to be involved here. 16 targets over his last 2 games. And again, it was not that long ago. Like, we're talking 2 years. People were taking this guy in like the 5th round of fantasy football drafts. He does have some pedigree. He's a good player. He just blew his chance with Kyle Shanahan, who tends to be a bit of a finicky head coach, and the San Francisco 49ers. But as you've seen, he's kind of been the guy who's jumped over the scrap heap of wide receiver fours for the New York Giants, and he's inserted himself into that wide receiver 3 role with Kenny Golladay still out. If we like Jones to pass the ball, and the Giants do average 39 pass attempts per game, if we like him to pass the ball maybe 40 times tonight, Pettis is going to be on the field, and Pettis is 5,000 in the flex. Kadarius Toney may not be 100%. He may not play the whole game. I think you could see Pettis push for 60, 70% of the snaps in the spot, regardless of who's active, who's healthy. I like him as a flex play as well. Again, I'm not going to play him over Shepard because Shepard's cheap, but I think you can still flex him and go with like a 3-man stack with Daniel Jones.
Okay, Pierce, save us some cash here.
Well, as we've already mentioned, Tony is another option at receiver that you'd want to slot in there if you're stacking up the Giants. And, we don't know if he's going to play. We're a little more concerned about him. He might get a little bit lower ownership. But another interesting play, now this doesn't necessarily work correlation-wise, would be the Giants DST. The one thing that we know about the Chiefs this year is that offense, as explosive as they are, they're making a ton of mistakes. Mahomes is turning the ball over left and right. I mean, there's a good chance that you can get a defensive touchdown. Now, I don't know if that necessarily is going to help you out with your Daniel Jones stacks, because we want Daniel Jones to be playing from behind and passing. And if they get a defensive touchdown, maybe they get the lead, maybe they give the ball to Booker. But if you are considering playing Booker, then I think you definitely want to go with the value in the Giants DST, because there's going to be that turnover potential there and the possibility for a defensive touchdown.
Dude, they were a great Week 7 flyer in season long last week. Just going to say it. I think it was close to 20 points. I love you for that, Pierce. Pat Mayo, by the way, really likes over for Mahomes' rushing yards here. What's your favorite player prop for the game tonight, Pierce?
He's on the wrong quarterback. The rushing total for Daniel Jones is way too low. It was 21.5 yesterday. It's already bumped up to 22.5 because people like to watch the sweat and got that advice.
Yeah.
I imagine it's going to go even higher. You look at Daniel Jones's rushing totals, 27, 95, 39, 27, 28. He missed against the Cowboys because he got injured in that game. He missed against the Rams because it's the Rams and they got blown out. But other than that, Jones has been running RPOs. He's scrambling well. He's getting pretty good protection. And then you look at what Kansas City has allowed on the ground to opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson went for over 100. Jalen Hurts went for over 45. Josh Allen went for over 45. I think Herbert had about 15. Heineke didn't run, but that's because they won't let Heineke run. And then Ryan Tannehill didn't have to run because it was a blowout. So, I mean, again, end of the day, this is Daniel Jones versus the Chiefs defense.
Dang.
So you should be able to go over this total.
Okay, Jones has not run, though, with much reckless abandon in recent weeks. What do you want to do here for your player prop, Jeff?
No, I don't think you should buy into what Daniel Jones's last 3 games. Like, I would just kind of not look at his game logs. They've been so weird, injured, bad blowouts and on either side. So I'm kind of with Pierce. I like the over on Daniel Jones's more than Patrick Mahomes. You look at Mahomes, the one blow win that the Chiefs had, he only ran 3 times. So I don't know, 10-point favorites. I would rather go over on Jones. But my favorite player prop, I'm going to go back to Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams is -110 to score a touchdown in this game. But if you go into the special player props here, you can get Darrell Williams to score anytime and Kansas City to win the game at +115. Again, Kansas City is coming in as +10.5 favorites. So it's not like we're taking on a ton of risk by adding them to win the game. And if Darrell Williams finds the end zone here, I mean, I feel like their win probability probably jumps up by a 2 times multiple here. So I like this. You're getting plus money. Again, it's +115 for Darrell Williams to find the end zone, which he's got a very good shot to do here against the Giants. He is their main red zone back. You've got to figure Andy Reid really just wants to run the ball as much as possible tonight and get out of here with a win and not turn it over 3 times. So I think all things considered, looking at Darrell Williams props, whether it's over the rushing yards to score a touchdown is good. But I think the best value here is with Darrell Williams to score and Kansas City to win. Again, it's plus 115.
You two have been busy. You two have been crushing it all morning long. But before we send you on your merry way, hook me up with your slate-approved pick tonight. Your favorite bet for the Chiefs hosting the Giants Monday Night Football, final game of Week 8 in the NFL. Jeff.
Again, I mentioned this one yesterday, and you know, people have been fading me because the value has gone up.
Yep.
New York Giants, team total touchdowns, over 2.5. It's now at plus 150. It was plus 125. So clearly everyone's been betting against me for the last 24 hours. Don't be those people. Get on this. This is good value. One team that the Kansas City Chiefs have faced so far has failed to hit this. The New York Giants going to have Shepard back most likely, probably going to have Tony back too. Look, they got DANTE PETTIS out there. I mean, former, fantasy stud.
Yeah.
So over 2.5 team touchdowns for the Giants. Again, it's plus 150. These are really nice odds we're getting.
All right, let's go, Pierce. Slate-approved pick, babe.
Give me the Giants and the points. I don't get this. Kansas City's only covered the spread 2 times this season. The Giants, yeah, they had a bad week 1, but then they went out week 2, covered the spread against Washington. Week 3, missed it by a hook against in the third matchup. Then they win outright against the Saints. They lose to Dallas. That's because Jones got injured. They got blown out by the Rams. Big deal. Then in their last game, they crushed Carolina as underdogs. This is way too many points for a Giants team that's perfectly average. They're not good, but they're average in just about every field, and their offensive line is playing better. Meanwhile, Kansas City is not a good team. The defense has problems. The Mahomes is struggling and making bad mistakes. I don't see how that's going to disappear. Their offensive line is not playing that well. They got a backup running back in. What are we doing? 10 points for the Giants? Yeah, I'll take that.
Pierce, you have been phenomenal, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut you loose. We're going to set you free. Jeff, you still have to prove yourself. We have some hockey questions for you. Paul Bruno is going to join the party, and that's coming up right after this break.
Excited.
All right, everybody. Last block of the show here. We're going to talk some sticky puck. NHL opening face-off. We're going to see who our analysts believe will have a big night for you in DFS. We got Jeff Ulrich here. We got RotoWire's Paul Bruno in the house as well. Only 3 games on this slate, gentlemen. Who do you like paying up for more in the Washington-Tampa game? Ovechkin or Stamkos, Paul?
Both team captains have come out flying this season, Emerson. Ovi has 15 points. Stammer has 12 through 8 games played. In this evening's comparative outlook, though, I'll lean in favor of Stammer because of the home ice advantage, which will make it easier for Tampa's coach John Cooper to keep his star away from the Caps' top checkers and shutdown pair while hounding Ovechkin with his best defensive pieces owing to those last-minute change advantages. I also factor in the decided edge in goal with Vasilevsky over either Caps goalie. Save 900 on Stamkos here.
What do you think here, Jeff?
Yeah, it's a pretty stout analysis by Paul. I mean, it really comes down to the slate. I mean, if you're paying $8,800 for Alex Ovechkin tonight, again, in a tough matchup, you got Vasilevsky in goal. Could easily just put a cork and we could end up with like 9 shots on goal, but no points from Ovechkin. But you've got Connor McDavid at 9,200, who you really want to get up to versus the Seattle Kraken. I'll go with Stamkos here as well. the Lightning have spread out their offense a little bit. Stamkos taking a little bit more of a front and center role this year. He's upped everything just in terms of his shot rate over the last week and a half as well. So yeah, I'll go with Stamkos here. Again, take the savings because you're going to want to save and try and get up to McDavid.
Okay, so Jeff, is that you're going to end up paying up for just in DFS tonight overall? Anyone else?
I mean, look, it's so obvious right now in
Yeah.
NHL, DFS, that you need to get up to Connor McDavid, especially on small slates like this. I get it. He's going to be like 50% owned, but we're talking about a player averaging 5.7 shots on goal already. Clearly Connor McDavid has decided he just wants to score more goals this year. And when Connor McDavid decides he wants to do something in the NHL, he does it. So you've got the Seattle Kraken also probably going to be starting Joey Decord, their third string goalie tonight. They basically just decided, hey kid, go at it, see what you can do. This one could get ugly. It's got the Oilers have a 4.0 implied team total here. Yeah, you got to pay up for Connor.
You agree with that, Paul?
Absolutely. I think stacking the Oilers is definitely a play. With their high win probability, though, I make sure I get the goalie in, too. I take Koskinen in goal for $8,100. He's played very well in compiling a 4-1 record with a 93.4 save percentage. That includes 3 games where he's allowed 1 goal against. That's kind of the output I'm looking for tonight. If he sits, I still take his backup Stuart Skinner. I also like the matchup for Zach Hyman, though, tonight against Seattle. He has fit in seamlessly on the wing with McDavid. If McDavid's on fire, Hyman's going to be on the score sheet as well because they are also on the top power play unit together. He gets the favorable matchup against a Seattle team. Listen, this club's going to look like an expansion team when they're up against a pronounced disadvantage like they see tonight. I say take Hyman for $6,300 as well.
So, Paul, in a 3-game slate, when I ask you where the best value is in DFS, what do you think?
With all the big money we're spending, Emerson, I need to save a little dough here, so I know that I'll pay up elsewhere. I'm going to take Nick Paul of the Ottawa Senators for $4,200. I like seeing my name on a sweater. That's part of the reason why. Actually, he's in a great spot as well as the center between Tim Stützle and Connor Brown on the Sens' second line, and he'll get a good matchup against a Chicago team that's going to be more concerned with stopping Ottawa's first unit, I think. And on defense, I consider Mikhail Sergachev a great option for $4,400. He has 6 points in 8 games, as well as putting up 2 shots on goal per game so far this season. He's also piling up the block shots, so he's filling in across the board on the DK scoring methods. All of this has him averaging, in fact, 9.1 DK points per game. I say he goes over that mark tonight and is a good value for $4,400 this evening.
All right, Jeff, you're spending some money, so help us save some cash.
Yeah, and I mean, you really can stack some of these big players like a Stamkos and McDavid together tonight because there are some really, really cheap wingers with some pretty decent potential. Jaden Schwartz going up against the Edmonton Oilers, only $2,900. Schwartz still goalless on the year, but I mean, he's getting the minutes for Seattle because they really don't have any other offensive players. He's picked it up of late as well, 7 shots on goal in his last couple games. He's got an assist in each of his last 3 games as well. So he's getting those minutes. The Seattle offense has got on board a little bit. And as much as we like the Oilers offense, I mean, their defense is not good. I mean, they're allowing a ton of shots on goal. They're still allowing a ton of scoring chances as well. Their power play or their penalty kill, is good. Like the Oilers special teams are good, but Schwartz is going to have opportunities at 5-on-5, and it's not like Mikko Koskinen is the most. He's not Andre Vasilevsky. He may have the odd good game, but he can definitely let in 5 or 6 goals on a night when he so chooses. So Jaden Schwartz at $2,900 in a first-line role against the Oilers, man, that is really good value, and that'll let you fit in guys like McDavid on the other side. So.
All right, Jeff, get us out of here with this. Favorite money line or puck line bet tonight on this 3-game slate?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Ottawa Senators on the road against the Chicago Blackhawks, plus 110 straight up on the money line. I mean, the Senators, their first line's playing well. I mean, Tkachuk, Norris, Batherson, and then, we know the story with the Blackhawks. They're still without Patrick Kane. The Senators might be getting Gustafsson back in net. That's going to solidify things for them. So all things considered, I don't like either one of these teams, but I like the Senators just a little bit more. And I think their first line is in a spot here where they could potentially dominate this game and win like a 4-3 game. So give me the Senators on the money line.
All right, Paul, bring us home.
Hey, I'm in lockstep with Jeff on this one. It stands out. I'll go back to the Sens in their visit to Chicago as a plus 110 underdog. They look great in a tougher test on Friday in Dallas, and you'll recall I got that call as well. I'm looking for more of the same because I see a Chicago team that's lacking in focus, and they're reeling from a poor 7-2 start, and that's compounded by the off-ice news that surfaced around this team in recent days. I think Jeff and I are going to win some people some money with this call.
All right, good stuff, Paul. Thanks, dude. And Jeff, busy Monday for you, man. You got the slate at 5 o'clock with Glash and Matt Meiselman over on YouTube and Twitch. And we also have a Madden slate kicking off here with Broncos Rams coming up at high noon. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us on this Monday. I'll see everyone back here tomorrow with Jesse Cofield at 11 o'clock. Peace.